Welcome to the deep dive. All right, let's get right into it. You've dropped us into a really interesting spot, specifically Chapter 4 of ThinkJs4.pdf, the section focused entirely on autosuggestion.
That's right. And that's our mission for this deep dive, to really unpack what this chapter presents about autosuggestion. How does it function? And crucially, how does the source connect it directly to achieving desired outcomes, particularly, well, the pursuit of wealth, which is the broader topic here.
Yeah, and this chapter immediately grabs you. It calls autosuggestion the third step toward riches. That tells you right away how fundamental it seems to be in the framework this source is building. It also labels it as the medium for influencing the subconscious mind. Big letters.
Exactly. So by the end of this, we really want you, the listener, to have a crystal clear picture of this principle. Why this source elevates it to such importance, and maybe most importantly, the very specific, almost tactical instructions it gives for actually putting it into practice.
Okay, so let's unpack this idea of autosuggestion itself. This source frames it in a very particular way, doesn't it?
It does. The chapter defines autosuggestion quite simply as self-suggestion. And it says it applies to every suggestion, every stimulus, really, that reaches your mind through your five senses.
Okay.
But the key here is how it's positioned. It's described as the absolutely essential communication link between your conscious, everyday thinking mind and your subconscious mind, which this source presents as like the power center, the part that acts.
So the conscious mind isn't just where we think. According to this, it has a specific job in this process, like a gatekeeper.
Precisely. The source actually calls the conscious faculty an outer guard. It receives all those sense impressions hitting you constantly, sights, sounds, everything. And it has the capacity to choose which ones it passes along to the subconscious and which it filters out or rejects.
And here's where it gets really interesting, I think. The source makes a really strong claim. It says absolutely and no thought, whether it's positive or negative, can get into the subconscious mind without the aid of autosuggestion. The only potential sort of wiggle room they mention is for thoughts picked up from the ether, which sounds a bit mysterious.
A little bit, yeah.
But the main takeaway seems to be you control the primary gateway through this autosuggestion thing.
And this is where the author makes a sharp, almost pointed observation. They argue that most people simply don't exercise this control over what their conscious mind allows into the subconscious.
They just let things flow in.
Seems to be the implication. And they directly link this lack of intentional control to why so many people struggle with poverty.
Wow, okay. That framing makes a lot more sense when you hear the analogy they use for the subconscious mind, though.
Oh, it's a great one, isn't it? They describe the subconscious as a fertile garden spot.
A garden?
Yeah, like a place ready to grow whatever is planted there.
And autosuggestion is the tool for planting. The shovel, maybe.
Exactly. It's the mechanism you use to voluntarily plant seeds of more desirable crops, meaning your creative, positive, goal-oriented thoughts. Or, and this is the crucial part if you're not actively planting, through sheer neglect. You're essentially allowing weeds, destructive thoughts, poverty consciousness thoughts, to just find their way in and take over that rich, fertile mental garden.
So it's not just passively sitting there. It's actively growing based on what gets put in, whether you meant to put it there or not. And the control lies with the conscious mind using this autosuggestion tool.
That's the core idea presented here. And speaking of control and effectiveness, the source hammers home one factor above all others for making autosuggestion actually work.
Which is?
Emotion, or feeling. The source is incredibly emphatic here. It says the subconscious mind recognizes and acts upon only thoughts which have been well mixed with emotion or feeling.
Cool.
According to this text, yes. Their point is plain, unemotional words, just repeated intellectually, maybe like rote memorization. They don't have any power to penetrate or influence the subconscious.
That feels like a really crucial distinction. It's not just the thought itself, but the energy you attach to it, the feeling.
Absolutely. They even use the example of the Emile Coué formula. Day by day, in every way, I am getting better and better.
I heard that one.
Right. You could repeat it 1,000,000 times, they say, but without infusing it with emotion, and specifically if, it's useless, no results.
Ah, faith. With a capital F in the text, it gets called out specifically.
It really does. The source identifies faith as the strongest and most productive of the emotions when you're trying to influence that subconscious mind.
Okay, so it's the top-tier fuel for this process.
Seems like it.
And mastering this ability to kind of direct your emotions purposefully, Sounds like it's not exactly effortless.
Oh, they're very clear about that. Gaining this kind of control, this ability to direct your emotions for a specific purpose, it has a price.
A price?
Yeah, it's definitely not presented as something for nothing. The price is consistent effort and real persistence. The source really emphasizes that if someone tries these principles and doesn't get results, it's not the method that failed. It's the individual's effort, or maybe lack thereof, to pay that required price.
Okay, so autosuggestion is the gateway. Emotion, especially faith, is the fuel. How does the source tie this, maybe slightly abstract idea, back into the practical steps towards riches they introduced earlier? Those 6 steps from the chapter on desire.
Right, yeah, they circle back directly to those instructions. Remember, that involved writing down your specific desire for money, reading it aloud, and crucially, seeing and feeling yourself already having that money. Doing it twice daily with absolute faith.
And this chapter, the autosuggestion chapter, reveals the mechanism behind those steps, why they work.
Exactly. The entire process they laid out is the practical application of autosuggestion, according to this text. You're deliberately communicating the object of your desire directly to your subconscious mind, and you're doing it infused with that spirit of absolute faith.
Makes sense.
And the source notes that the repetition aspect, doing it daily, helps build favorable thought habits around your desire. Makes it more automatic, maybe.
The source also draws a parallel, doesn't it? It says to compare these 6 steps to the instructions for organizing a mastermind group described elsewhere in the book.
It does, yeah. It suggests that all these principles are kind of interlinked and work together synergistically. And within those steps, particularly the first one about defining the exact amount of money you want, the source highlights the absolute necessity of concentration.
Concentration, held with that emotion and faith we talked about.
Precisely. You need to fix your thoughts on that specific desire so intensely that it becomes, and they use this phrase, a burning obsession.
A burning obsession. Wow.
Yeah. So when you're working through those 6 steps, holding the thought of the exact amount of money you desire requires concentrating on it with your faith and vividly seeing yourself already in possession of it.
Okay, this leads us to that intriguing idea the source floats playing a perfectly legitimate trick on your subconscious mind. What's that all about? Sounds a bit sneaky.
Huh. Yeah, it does sound a bit like that, but they frame it as legitimate. It's a fascinating concept. The idea is you deliberately make your subconscious mind believe because you believe it so completely and intensely that you simply must have this desired money and that it's basically already there waiting for you. You convince yourself first, essentially.
And the payoff for this trick, if your subconscious buys it.
Well, the source claims that once the subconscious accepts this belief because you've impressed it so strongly, it will start handing over to you practical plans for acquiring the money.
Ah, so the how comes from the subconscious.
That's the idea. You essentially delegate the task of figuring out the how to your deeper mind, fueled by your belief and imagination.
And a critical instruction here is not to wait for those plans before you start the process of visualizing and demanding.
Absolutely not. That's a huge point they make. The source says you start seeing yourself in possession of the money immediately, while simultaneously demanding and fully expecting that the plans will be provided by your subconscious. Don't wait for the roadmap.
Okay, start visualizing now, expect the plan later, and then you have to be on the alert for them, like listening.
Exactly. Be watchful, pay attention, because they might not arrive neatly packaged with a bow.
How might they show up?
The text says they might flash into your thought unexpectedly, like a sudden insight or idea. The source even speculates that they might come from infinite intelligence, suggesting a source beyond your everyday rational thought process.
Okay, so be open to inspiration. And the warning about acting on these plans is pretty stark.
It really is. You must act on them immediately when they appear. That's emphasized.
Immediately.
Yeah, and they follow it with, failure to do this will be fatal to your success.
Fatal. Wow. That's putting some serious weight on taking action when the insight arrives. It's not just like a good idea. According to the source, it's absolutely essential, non-negotiable.
It truly seems to be framed that way. And they add another caution, too. Don't rely solely on reason when trying to figure out your plans initially.
Don't trust reason. Why not?
Well, they describe reason as potentially faulty or maybe even lazy in this specific context. It reinforces the idea that these practical steps might emerge from a more intuitive subconscious place once the desire is firmly planted with that faith and emotion. Reason might talk you out of it too soon.
Got it. Trust the flash of insight over just logic, maybe.
Hmm.
And one final very specific visualization detail I remember reading.
Hmm.
When you're seeing yourself with the money, you should also clearly see yourself providing the service or delivering the merchandise you intend to give in exchange for that money.
Yes, an important point. It ties the receiving directly to the principle of giving value, of exchange, embedding that concept right into the visualization itself. It's not just about getting, it's about the whole transaction.
Okay, so let's try and boil it down. Let's
Yeah.
summarize the practical steps the source lays out for applying all of this. They offer 3 key instructions, right?
Okay, yeah, here's the action plan presented, sort of synthesized. First, find a quiet place, ideally in bed just before falling asleep, somewhere you won't be interrupted or disturbed.
Quiet spot. Check.
Close your eyes. Repeat aloud your written statement, the exact amount of money, the time limit, and the service or merchandise you'll provide in return. And critically, while you're doing this, you must actively see yourself already in possession of the money. Feel it.
Got it. Aloud, see it, feel it. What's number 2?
Second, concentrate intently on the exact amount of money you're aiming to accumulate. Just hold your focus on that specific sum.
Focus on the number. Okay. And the third?
Third, make a written copy of your statement, that same statement, and place it where you'll see it easily, night and morning. Read it just before bed and immediately upon waking up. Keep doing this until you have it completely memorized word for word.
So these 3 steps are literally the mechanics of applying autosuggestion as this chapter describes it. This is how you do it.
Precisely. According to the source, you're using these physical actions, speaking aloud, visualizing, concentrating, reading, repeating, to impress those specific instructions onto your subconscious mind. And remember, the big caveat, according to this source, the subconscious only acts on instructions that are emotionalized, especially those delivered with feeling and, yes, faith.
That emotional charge is non-negotiable.
Seems so.
The source also advises you to follow these instructions not just literally, like checking boxes, but in spirit as well as in act.
Yeah.
Even if they might feel a bit, I don't know, abstract or impractical when you first try them.
Yes, they definitely acknowledge that initial skepticism is perfectly natural when you encounter an idea like this. It sounds different. But they assert that if you stick with it, follow the instructions with persistence, that skepticism will gradually transform into belief and ultimately solidify into absolute faith. It's a process of building conviction.
This brings us to the larger claim the source makes, kind of the philosophical underpinning about human potential.
It does. The chapter concludes by asserting that man can be the master of his own destiny, and not just as a nice philosophical thought, but because he possesses this inherent power to influence his own subconscious mind.
That's the mechanism of mastery.
That's how it's presented, and through that influence, he can potentially gain the cooperation of what they refer to as infinite intelligence. Whatever that means precisely, it implies tapping into something bigger.
And where does this chapter on autosuggestion fit into the whole picture the book is painting? How critical is it?
Oh, the source explicitly states it's the keystone.
The keystone,
Yeah.
like in an arch.
Yeah.
The central piece holding it all together.
Exactly. It's presented as the central foundational principle of the entire philosophy in the book. To succeed in what they call transmuting desire into money, this keystone principle must be understood and, more importantly, applied with persistence.
So all the other principles discussed in the book, desire, faith, specialized knowledge, imagination, they're essentially supporting acts for this one.
That's how they frame it, yeah. Autosuggestion is the primary agency, the main tool for actually initiating that process of transmuting desire into its physical equivalent, like money. The other principles are presented as the tools you use to make your application of autosuggestion more effective, more powerful.
Okay. And they wrap up this section with a simple but kind of powerful piece of advice about the attitude to take when doing all this.
Yes, basically carry out these instructions, especially the visualization and repetition, with the faith of a child.
Childlike faith.
That simple, unquestioning belief that kind of bypasses adult cynicism or overanalysis. The author actually states they've tried to keep the instructions practical, genuinely wanting to be helpful, not just philosophical.
And there's a very strong recommendation, almost a command, for what to do after you've read the whole book regarding this specific chapter.
There is. They urge you, the reader, to come back specifically to this chapter on autosuggestion and read the entire chapter aloud once every single night.
Every night. Wow.
Every night. Keep doing it until you are thoroughly, completely convinced, like deep down in your bones, that the principle of autosuggestion is sound and that it's capable of achieving what the source claims it can.
It's about letting it really permeate, isn't it? Moving from just intellectual understanding to a deep felt conviction, a knowing.
Precisely. Engaging the subconscious through that consistent vocal repetition and focused attention, making it part of you.
So when you take all of this in, the idea that your subconscious mind is this fertile garden and it acts only on the seeds you plant that are infused with emotion and faith,
Yeah.
and that autosuggestion is the way you deliberately plant those seeds, consciously choose what goes in,
Yeah.
it really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
According to this source, what thoughts and feelings are you currently letting take root in your conscious mind, maybe without even noticing? And therefore, what are you allowing to influence that subconscious garden, perhaps unintentionally shaping your results? And then, the big question, what might happen? What might actually change in your life if you decided to cultivate that garden deliberately, with a kind of intensity and the simple, maybe unwavering faith that this source describes? Something to really sit with after this deep dive.